Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I am delighted to be joined by Matt Berg, who will be talking to you about Microsoft Teams. Remember to join the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC17. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Matt in the questions window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Matt Berg. Hello, Matt, and it's muted for some reason, so just bear with me here, everyone, and I'll see if I can get Matt unmuted. Just bear with me, I'm just trying to get Matt on the line for everyone. Just one sec. Hello, Matt, can you hear me?
Shane,
hello,
I'm
Matt.
On my speakers now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt.
Okay. All right. Give me one moment. I dialed in over my telephone. We're gonna go over my PC. So I am gonna plug in my trusty Jabra headset. So we have slightly higher fidelity than the built-in microphone on my Microsoft Surface Book. So bear with me while I get this going. And while I do that, really excited to be here, so thank you very much for having me. I hope that 58 minutes is enough to speak to everybody, but if it's not, continue to put your questions through the chat window. I will do my best to answer them during this presentation, and if I'm not able to, I will work with Shane to get those answered after the webinar is over, and we'll send them out to each and every one of you. All right, I'm going to switch devices. Give me a moment. All right. I have my headset on. Shane, can you just let me know if you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Matt.
Fantastic. All right. I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see my slide of very happy people eating at some cafe?
Yep, it's right there.
All right, great. You know, I've been wondering about this photo. I've now seen it for a year now. I want to know where they're eating and what they're talking about. I'm guessing if they're all using Microsoft Teams, why aren't they just talking? So anyway, well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I've been using Microsoft Teams for approximately 8 or 9 months now. It has really changed the way I work. Quick introduction, I am what we call a productivity specialist for Microsoft in Los Angeles. I've spoken at 5 European SharePoint conferences. Prior to that, I worked up in the SharePoint product group up in Seattle at Microsoft, and I love what I do. I love the SharePoint world, and even though we call it Microsoft Teams, there's so much SharePoint in it that it's something that's been near and dear to my heart. I'm going to focus on what is in Microsoft Teams and what it does for the first part of the webinar, and then we're going to take a step back and go through architecture. So we'll kind of understand what is in Microsoft Teams as we move forward. When we talk about groups of people that work together, they all have different needs. Some want a chat-based workspace, so they'll use tools like Slack or HipChat or Skype for Business. Mail and calendar is a big part for a more formal communication. People will still send email. That's still the most popular part of communication. For more urgent meetings, people will use voice or video. We're seeing more and more people needing to co-author or co-create content. Let's work together on a particular presentation or a document. For larger groups, sites are still a very big thing. Once in a while, a customer will say to me, well, I heard SharePoint's going away, or no one uses that anymore. And, I'll just show them our website or show them some case studies and say, actually, as a matter of fact, that's pretty different from the truth. And then lastly, enterprise social. So Yammer is a great example of an enterprise social tool. Email is a great tool for sending a note to someone you know has the answer or who might have the answer. Yammer is a wonderful tool where you have no idea who may have the answer for the question that you'd like to ask. So one of the biggest issues then are people are spending money on all these different siloed applications. I'll go into a customer where IT is spending the money. I'll go to other customers where the business has given someone a credit card, and data is now in Slack and Box and Dropbox and Google Apps, and then there's all these additional security tools. So it could get kind of quickly crazy. Lots of wasted time. Switching between apps, or, hey, I know that file is in SharePoint, but can you upload another file to this tool that our team is using now? So the amount of time of going back and forth between the 2 or 3 or 4 apps could be quite crazy. And then lastly, as I alluded to, shadow IT. Doesn't matter what sort of IT security tools there are. It's amazing how easy it is for employees to get around those controls by simply using a mobile device. So that's where Microsoft Teams comes into play. Microsoft Teams, first and foremost, is a chat tool. So let's kind of make that really clear. The reason I say that is because it's very important not to force people to use a tool that they don't want to. In some cases, formal communication like email is still important. In other cases, a formalized SharePoint portal is useful and necessary. So we're talking about chat. It's a place to work together. So a true hub for teamwork, completely customizable, and all the same security that an IT leader who may have chosen Office 365 for is going to know and trust. So when we talk about chat, this is the part I'm talking about, and then we'll demo in a few moments. First, threaded, persistent chat. The biggest issue, and I don't like to start with a negative, but the biggest issue I often see with instant messaging in Skype for Business is that the app is misused. It was always designed all the way back to live communication server or communicator. It was designed to be an instant message tool. That means a quick note to say, hey Shane, I'm running late, or hey Mark, would you like to grab a bite to eat, or hey Mary, when is the meeting starting? So what has happened is people will use that tool as a way to get around email, because email, they're overloaded with it. So they'll send an instant message, and it's not 1 or 2 or 3 sentences. It's a paragraph. It's an entire novel. And when I click the close box, because I don't want to read that message from you because I'm not available because my little icon says busy, that message goes away. And sure, I can find it buried in my conversation history in Outlook, but it's highly unlikely that I will. So Teams brings true threaded historical conversation. So let me give you a real example. I spend most of my days visiting my customers, and I live in Los Angeles, so I truly spend most of my day in my car. Someone might send me a note, hey Matt, got a question about deploying Microsoft Teams. I don't respond. I'm driving. But when I have a few moments after my customer meeting, I open up Teams and I see that conversation thread, and I can see what time it was posted, and I can respond. And so my colleague Allison, she might be in a meeting at that time, but at least we're able to have this conversation in context in a thread. Historically, Allison might hit me up on Skype for Business. I guess I should be using a fake name, but Allison's a real person, account manager that I work with here in California. But in the past, she'd hit me and a Skype IM, hey, I've got a question about this, and I don't respond because I'm not at my desk. In other cases, she might send me an email, but I don't respond because it's buried and mixed in with 127 other emails that I received that day. So that threaded chat is really helpful for those of us who are in sales, those of us who are in marketing, people in customer service support, people in IT, to have some context around those conversations. Now, Allison might have sent that to me as a private chat, but Allison could have also sent that to a larger group of people, perhaps the group of specialists on my team. So it would be more of this, hey team, I have a question about this particular account. I want to know if Teams has been activated in their tenant. Does anybody know? And again, since I'm not available, someone else may step in and respond, and I'm able to see that someone has responded in that specific conversation in that team. We do like to have fun in Teams, so we've added tools like emojis, stickers, GIFs. If you look at my demo window, that's all it is. It's just a bunch of GIFs and stickers and and emojis, because our team likes to have fun when doing it. But something you can turn on or turn off if you don't think it's appropriate. Recently, we launched mobile video and voice calling on Android and now iOS. This is really important. We're going to talk about when to use which application. Is it Skype for Business or is it Teams? And when it comes down to impromptu or instant, that's where this video button and this voice button comes in. So if I'm, chatting with somebody and I say, Shane, we need to talk right away, I just hit that one icon. I can be on my Android, I can be on my iPhone, and that video would start immediately with Shane using our next-gen video and voice service. And just so everybody knows, under the hood of this car, this vehicle, the video and the voice service is the Skype for Business tool. It's our next-generation tool, which will be coming to Skype for Business shortly, but it is really great quality and great speed. Email integration just launched as well, so I have an email address as part of each team that I could add. And then very shortly, at the end of this month, we're going to be adding guest access. So that means, yes, finally, like Yammer, like Groups, like SharePoint, you will be able to invite someone outside of your organization to join and participate in Microsoft Teams. So I mentioned the hub for teamwork. So beyond chat, we want to make it very, very easy for people to get work done. So we don't want you to have to hop around to multiple applications. So for example, Word, Excel, PowerPoint are all completely built in to Microsoft Teams. We've also integrated SharePoint, Power BI, Microsoft Planner. And we're grabbing intelligence across the Microsoft Graph for really good search. Now, for you SharePoint nerds out there, anytime someone at Microsoft says really good search, I'll have you know that came from our Microsoft FAST team, the old FAST Search team, the SharePoint team. So all of this search, still SharePoint under the hood. It's still SharePoint people. A lot of them are still in Oslo, Norway. But the way we make search great is leveraging that SharePoint search to search across people, file, and now chats. So again, you don't have to have things in your inbox to search. You can still go and do a search for a specific meeting you had, a specific file, and Teams will help you do that search. What we just recently added were ad hoc and scheduled meetings. This is crazy because I'm someone who has used Outlook for my calendars and my meetings for many years, and now right in Teams I can go and say make this a meeting, or let's schedule a meeting as well. I'm going to demonstrate this in a few minutes, so I won't spend too much time on the customization. But you can customize each team and each channel for what that group needs to work on. So that means you can create different tabs across the top of the page. You can develop your own bots. You can even do partner applications. So SAP, Trello, and you can see some of these others on the screen as well. A Smartsheet is another one that you can just embed right in there. So everyone might be different. You might just have the basic team that's just chat and files, and another larger team that might have a lot more third-party applications built right in there. Now, I want you to just remember the security part of what we're talking about. Teams is still first and foremost Office 365. So every time we have a security conversation around Office 365, all of those security terms and rules apply to Microsoft Teams. That means we're compliant in the United States with HIPAA. That means we're compliant with EU model clauses. That means as Microsoft rolls out our GDPR strategy, you're going to hear that Teams is going to be a part of that. We offer that same multi-factor authentication for Teams as we do with Outlook or SharePoint. Information protection. So if you rights protect a document and it's stored in Teams, that's going to still be rights protected. If you want to leverage Intune to manage devices that connect to Teams, you're going to have that as well. So those of you who are in security can really breathe a sigh of relief to know and understand that Teams really respects all those same security controls. Again, we'll make the slide deck available for everybody, but oftentimes I'll get, Matt, this is really interesting, but who in my company would use Teams? I think there are so many different scenarios for people to use Teams. As I mentioned, I gave an example from sales. I think marketing is great for coordinating tasks. I work with several people inside our event planning team, and Teams is a wonderful tool for planning an event that has a very specific time and different streams or workloads. I'll actually show you the Teams that I used along with Dan Holm and the team at Microsoft to plan the keynote for the last European SharePoint conference. Engineering, I think, is a really great example. We integrate directly with Jira or GitHub, and then support as well. So before I jump into architecture, I'd like to do a demo. So I'm going to jump out of this PowerPoint slide deck, and let's go right into Microsoft Teams. And Shane, would you just let me know if you can see what we've got over here?
Yeah, I can see your European SharePoint conference screen.
Great. I just kind of moved over, and this is what I warned you about. When you're in a test environment, people love adding test connectors, and my buddy Panos added weather. So every day we're getting the weather report in this team. So let me scroll. There we go. We'll kind of scroll up right over here, and let me walk you through what we're seeing. So I'm in a team right now. So my team is called Demo West Tech Summit Series, and we have different channels. We have our general channel for my entire team. We have other channels for conference logistics, for content, for test, and we have team fun stuff, and we've got videos. So in some cases, the general team might be all you need, but in other cases, if you have different work streams, perhaps a different channel would be the way to go. So for example, Shane's team might have, it would say European SharePoint Conference, and the main one might be logistics, another would be registration, another would be food and beverage, another would be content. So those could be the different areas that his team are working on when it comes to the conference. Now you see here, again, this is very chat focused. Let's review schedule and travel. Let me respond to Julia and say, sorry I'm late to the game, but I'd love to join the team. So I'm going to go ahead and post that. Julia will get notification that I responded. Of course, don't look at the date, but I'm 2 months late. So maybe it's appropriate to add a little emoji, again, just like I do in my iPhone, where I can maybe find the face palm because I'm so late right over there. I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of GIFs before. I'm not going to add one here, but I always like to have GIFs of kittens because I think those are the cleanest ones on the internet today and the ones that make everybody feel good and happy. But you've got GIFs for everything across the internet, so we've connected with Jiffy for you to do that. Now, in this case, someone had asked Mike to post the RFP that we need to review. So Mike simply hit upload. So he responded, and he hit the upload icon down at the bottom of the screen. Now, what's important with that is when someone does hit upload, that's not just going to upload it to the conversation, but when we go over to files, you're going to see all the files that have been uploaded right here as well. So what's really nice is these files are in the thread, but they're also going to be part of the file section as well. Now let me take a step back and let's talk architecture for a moment. Hey Matt, where are these files located? That's the exciting thing for us that have been in the SharePoint world. These files are simply in SharePoint. So you don't ever have to go to the SharePoint UI if you don't want to, but I go ahead and I click that link, and there are those same exact files sitting. And if you look at the URL, SharePoint.com, it's in the Microsoft tenant, it's in the Teams section, and Demo West Tech Summit Series is the area, and then my shared folder is this folder I was looking at, and everything below it is simply another folder. So let that sink in for a moment. I'm showing this brand new tool with the chat capabilities and these file capabilities, but for all of us who are in the world of SharePoint, just understand that those files are just stored in SharePoint, which means anything you can do in SharePoint regarding permissions, regarding flow, regarding synchronizing, all can be done right there inside the browser. All right, so we had our conversation view. I've got my files, and these are the different tabs. I can add in more tabs by simply clicking the plus icon. Every day we add more tools. So in my screenshot, you saw half. So Excel and OneNote, a PDF. So very specifically, you have a document, a contract, employee handbook, Planner, which is great for tasks and teams, Power BI, Power Apps, PowerPoint, YouTube, Wiki is new, Intercom as a new communication tool, Hootsuite, Asana, Smartsheet, Trello, Zendesk. Zendesk is a big one for managing support. Zenefits is a new one for HR. So we're going to constantly add new tabs from our partners. Sometimes I'll just drop a SharePoint site right in. I'll just click SharePoint. Visual Studio, I'm not a developer, but I might do that as well. So that will add these tabs across the top. So let's show you some of them. Here's OneNote. So again, this still lives in OneNote. Where is this OneNote stored? It's simply a OneNote file stored inside SharePoint. So these are the different meetings we've had. So I've got my kickoff meeting notes. These are our attendees. We were talking about putting an event together. How many cities? Tier 1 or Tier 2? Here's a map of where we're thinking of doing it. These are the notes from our first event. So again, it just embedded, which is great, it just embedded OneNote directly in here. So our goal is to help people not have to jump around to different applications if they don't want to. I can go ahead and I can switch over. I'm using my pen, and here on my Surface Book, and I can, terrible handwriting. I think that's supposed to say great. And, again, we can really truly interact directly with this. There's a problem, just so you know, if you do use a Mac, the inking on the screen with a pen doesn't work. We recommend not trying to use a Sharpie or any sort of permanent marker. Normally, if we're in an audience where everyone's unmuted, I hear you either laughing or groaning at my terrible Mac joke, but in the meantime, I'll just continue on. So that was OneNote. I can move on to my event plan. In this particular case, we integrated with Microsoft Planner. So you'll hopefully see Planner momentarily. There we go. So this is a great tool, if you've not seen it, for managing tasks. And it is very simple. It's not Microsoft Project, nor is it designed to compete with Microsoft Project. The idea here is these are our to-do items. These are the groups or buckets that they're in. And these are the people they're assigned to. So for example, order lunch. I'm going to take the order lunch, and we're going to move that into logistics. I realized that Arno was supposed to review the content. It was due on the 11th of April. We're going to move that forward to July. So Arno's in good shape here, and we'll close that out. And you can, apparently you're supposed to hit save. You get the point. So I can go ahead and quickly move to chat as well. I can open up the chat window. So I'm now in chat, very specifically relevant to this conversation. I can say timeline looks a little tight. Perhaps we need to move some of these out to July. And now that chat is related to this conversation here, right there in Planner, which is now embedded in Teams. And our integration points are just going to get better and better. I can't remember what this is, so I'm going to look at my agenda and see what we added in here. Oh, we just embedded a PowerPoint. So we took PowerPoint, we made it a tab to make it really easy to quickly view the proposed agenda. If they wanted to make some edits, we can edit right there in PowerPoint Online. As most of you know, if it's a quick edit, you just need to edit some text. You go ahead and you can edit it in online in the browser. But if it is an edit that you need to do that perhaps might need some extra horsepower, then you're going to go ahead and edit that right in PowerPoint on your desktop. Jumping over to the Keynote, we can go ahead, in this particular case, we added a YouTube video. So just to give everyone an idea of what that video looks like, we embedded it right there. So one click right inside YouTube. We can also do that with video or Stream, which is the new video app inside Office 365. And my personal favorite, everyone, is in fact Power BI. So now imagine you want to look at some real-time data, some real-time stats of what's going on a project with sales, with some engineering, with a marketing campaign. So we've been inviting people from all over the world to join our series of events. Here are my campaign analytics. This data is coming from SQL. The Power BI is right there in the Power BI app. I want to focus specifically on Europe to see what's going on, what countries were people registering from. It's the UK, it's Germany, it's France, it's Italy, a little bit from Turkey. But all this data, normally in the Power BI app where I can zoom in and view more specific details, is all embedded and viewable right inside Microsoft Teams. So let that sink in for a moment. Every piece of Office 365 and every piece you may want to interact with outside of Office 365 is right there inside my team. Now, what if I wanted to bring some more things to the conversation? You saw that weather report that we put in there a little bit. I can go ahead and I can look at my other options on the three little dots or the ellipses next to the word general. So one, I can pick to follow this channel. That means I'd like to make this a favorite and get more notifications as people put items in here. By the way, I'm totally distracted by my facepalm emoji right over there. I want to, again, go to the SharePoint site related. I can say open in SharePoint. I want to add a channel to this. We can simply hit add, and we're going to add a channel called Executive Travel. And this is where our leadership team and our assistants will manage the travel of our executive speakers. So we don't want to risk Satya Nadella showing up in the wrong city, at the wrong event, walking on stage when it's not his time, and all that information. So let's go back to what our other options are. Very easily add members. This will connect to Active Directory and invite other members in. And eventually, when we support external, you'll be permitted to invite members outside of your organization. And again, that was promised for the end of this month, so maybe 3 short weeks. Of course, we do reserve the right to let it slip if there's something broken, but we are still targeting the end of June. I'm going to skip connectors for a moment. And we've got get email address. So this is really important. What if you wanted to add an email address or really add the Teams conversation to an email thread? We're going to give you an email address. All you got to do is hit copy and add this directly to a mail. I've got a question that I'd love to answer. So we can go ahead and, the question is, got questions, type them here. Awesome, Shane. Thanks for moderating. So again, guys, feel free to drop your questions in. If I don't see any questions, I'm just going to assume I'm just doing such a thorough job.
We've got loads of questions, Matt, but we'll keep them till the end. How about that?
Oh, I appreciate that, Shane. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll put them to the end for the last 5-10 minutes or something like that.
All right, you got it. Great. Well, we'll get to them in about 10 or 15 then. So we were on get an email address. By the way, Shane, it's just I'm so used to using Skype for Business or Skype Broadcast that when I use GoToWebinar, I miss some things. So thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll move in the future. Don't worry.
Good. You got that jab. Anyway, so if you want to get a link to the channel, so for example, if someone's just not really participating very much in Teams, you can go ahead and grab a link and say, hey, Shane, all the information you need is actually here in the team. Here's the link. Go ahead and click this link to join what we're doing. Now let's look at some of these connectors that we can bring in here. And this is a very intense amount of connectors you can add. So we'll get this list, let this list load. It's quite large, so I'll show you a few of them. There's RSS, there's Jira, there's Twitter, there's Yammer. So for example, if your team has always used Yammer, but you might want to move into Teams but get notifications if someone does post something in Yammer, you can do that as well. Trello, Wunderlist, soon Microsoft To Do, GitHub. We even support our competitors. If you want to bring in some Google Analytics data, you can. Asana, I know many of my customers will use Asana for task management. Some new ones like Chatra and Buddy. On the CRM side, obviously, Microsoft Dynamics 365 is supported, as well as our competitor, Salesforce, is in there as well. HR tools, Simple In Out, Bonusly is a new one as well. And then, you can even track Facebook. So if you're marketing, your social team is managing marketing in Teams to see how things are going with our brand launch. You can have Facebook updates come directly into Microsoft Teams. Yo, I read about this recently. It's very, very short communication, but that can be brought in as well. And then, again, I mentioned some of these other tools. Jira is a big one that I get asked about a lot. Now, the difference between tabs and the difference between tabs and these connectors is that tabs will literally create a tab across the top of your screen and embed that other app into Microsoft Teams, whereas these connectors will simply add text into the chat area. So I think that's important to differentiate. So you're going to see a more robust experience inside your tabs, but you're going to see a more text-based communication inside, inside these connectors. If you don't see the connector you want, I want you to remember a single website, dev.office.com, and we will help you develop your own connector. So Microsoft has all the information that you need to go ahead and connect in your own tools directly into Teams. Well, I spent a lot of time in the team because that is the most important part, but chat is a big part as well. So here is when we have a conversation. Long story on this. So this is an individual that I'm chatting with here. This is my friend Neil. By the way, Neil is my buddy who works on the Minecraft team. So I was up in Seattle, and I wanted to see if Neil wanted to get together. I asked any chance he was free for breakfast the next day, and I realized that I was on an airplane, and apparently this didn't send, so I guess that's a bad demo. So I can go into another conversation as well. So here's a bit of a deeper conversation with Sean and Steve. So what's the difference between Teams and chat? Well, again, Teams is your more formalized communication, and chat is your private, one-off conversation. So I was mentioning my conversations with Allison, and that's where this would come in, right? It's, the threaded conversation. I see the thread started at 8:12, Steve responded at 8:57, and then the conversation kind of goes on and on from there. I can still send files, I can still track them, but again, this is definitely less formal. Chat is also where your bots are going to come in. So this is T-Bot. This is our Microsoft Teams bot, and I can say, can I add GIFs? And let's see what T-Bot says. T-Bot says yes. Where's the GIF button and how do I send them? So this is the chat bot provided by Microsoft. We have a lot of different bots that you can connect in. We'll talk about the list later, but also you guys can develop your own bot. I had a customer just create a really neat bot for requesting time away and time off for holidays. So simply put, they would type in, I need to take a holiday. Now, T-Bot's not going to care, but a holiday bot might be able to do that and say, what dates would you like off? Very good. They would go ahead and automatically kick off a workflow. Your manager would get notification and then would be able to approve or reject that. Meetings. For those people who just don't like using Outlook anymore, we've got our meetings right over here. So here's a meeting I'm having with a customer. Now, this is just a regular meeting in Outlook. I accept, decline. I can see who's joining, who is invited right as well. But I can also schedule a Microsoft Teams meeting. So meeting title, location, information, I can go ahead and select a channel to meet in. This is pretty innovative, right? We're only talking about the executive travel, so I would put it there, and we're going to add Sean McNeil and Steve Lee and Arno, and we can say just a test, ignore. We always have to do this in our Microsoft meeting to discuss exec travel for fake event series. Just in case they don't read, we're going to go ahead and we'll schedule it for a little bit later this morning, and we're going to hit schedule meeting. So that meeting is going to be scheduled the same way, in a way, you schedule an Outlook. But, I mean, think about this. We now have the opportunity to create these meetings. It'll notify them in the conversation right over here. I can go to my meeting, and it'll be right here as well. Wait, what day did I schedule that for? We'll come back to that in a minute. There it is. Just a test, ignore. Sorry, I'm clicking too fast. We can kind of view meeting details, and we're ready to join this meeting. We just hit join online, and it's going to take us directly to the meeting. But I wanted to point something out. If you're a subscriber for Office 365 V5, you're going to get phone numbers right there, right embedded inside Microsoft Teams. So it is using the phone numbers of Skype for Business with conference calling. If you need an international number, you go ahead and hit get one right there, and it's not an accident. It's just going to take you to the Skype for Business dial-in page. So let's say we are in the United Kingdom. We can go ahead and we can look for that right over here as well and find a local dial-in. So again, E5. So it's Skype for Business that's behind the scenes here that is allowing this to happen. Files, again, all those files that we're working on across Microsoft Teams, across my OneDrive, across downloads are all going to appear here as well. And then any applications that we've plugged in my organization are going to appear here too. Now, the last thing I want to show you, and this is really important, are your settings and specifically its notifications. When you're trying to drive change management in a company to use this new Microsoft Teams tool, it is incredibly important to make sure that Can you guys still hear me? It looks like someone may have muted me.
Sorry, Matt. I think that might be me by accident.
We know how excited you are with your finger over that giant red mute button, Shane. All good. So these are some options, right? Banner and email, notifications, etc. When I rolled out Microsoft Teams to my org at Microsoft, I insisted that everyone turn on every notification. So just for a couple weeks, get highly annoyed, then we're going to bug you just to make sure you remember to use Teams. But over time, you can turn these off. So, you say, I don't need an email anymore. So just kind of a banner or a pop-up or a toast, sometimes we call it, to let me know that someone is trying to interact with me. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get back into the presentation. And let's kind of get into where everything in Microsoft Teams is. So I alluded to some of this before, but I wanted to a little more specifically explain what we're looking at here. So the first is, how do we know who's in Microsoft Teams? Everyone, it's the same way you do Office 365 and SharePoint and OneDrive. Azure Active Directory, first and foremost, is how you're going to store those identities. Where is most of the content and information in Teams? As I mentioned before, it's really in SharePoint. Each channel in a team has a folder in a SharePoint Online site. The Files tab is going to upload them directly to this site, and the files in a conversation are automatically added to files. How nice would it be if you IM someone a file in Skype for Business, it would just be stored inside SharePoint. Well, that's how Teams works. Permissions and file security options are automatically set and reflected in Teams. So that means even if you set a bunch of files in Teams and you changed permissions, you went in and you changed it in SharePoint, even if someone was in a team, they might get blocked, right? The assumption is Teams would reflect the SharePoint settings as well. But again, you can manage those permissions in the SharePoint client. Many of you know OneDrive is very similar to SharePoint. It's really built upon SharePoint. So those private chat files are actually hosted in your OneDrive for Business. Think about that for a minute. So if Sean sends me a file in our one-on-one chat. Hey, Matt, I want you to review this presentation for tomorrow, and I want to look at it later. That's actually stored in OneDrive, so I can view it that way. Permissions are automatically granted to everybody inside the chat, and if I need to change permissions later, I can automatically do that. Same thing with OneNote. We're automatically going to create a OneNote for everyone in that team, and there are different sections in that note created for each channel. You know, this is the integration I think I wanted since the day Office 365 was launched, and it's truly Teams that is bringing it all together here. Now here's the big question. Well, what about groups, Matt? How is groups different from teams? How is groups related to teams? And I just answer the word yes. And then I get a quizzical look on everyone's face. All permissions and all membership in teams is truly just managed by groups. So let that sink in for a moment, right? I know we launched groups before Teams, and people were using groups as a communication collaboration portal, which is still fine. But at the end of the day, if you spin up a group, it's all about the membership. If you want to make a group a team, you can do that so people can use Teams and can have chat. But that SharePoint site that you created in groups, it's the same SharePoint site of files that's in Teams. Your OneNote that you use in your group, it's the same OneNote in Teams. So again, to work with Teams, groups must be private, and they must have less than 600 members. We are going to increase that number soon. And team creation settings are managed in the admin portal. So again, if you're in a team, you're in a group. That's really the end of the story there. Now here's where it gets interesting. Exchange is part of Teams in a way. Exchange Online does create a group mailbox and a calendar for each team. So those meetings, those are actually stored in that group calendar. And the meetings are created in Exchange so they can sync to the Microsoft Teams tab. Your chat, your conversation that we're having, that's a bit of a different story, and we'll get to that in a minute. Your connectors, your tabs, your bots, all allow integration with Teams. They can be built from scratch, as I mentioned, or can connect to an existing app. Now, what about video? What about audio? That's our proven media stack. So that's all done by our team. It's a combination of people that work on video, that work on stream, that work on Skype for Business. So audio and video were launched as part of Teams. They're natively built in the Teams. They're available for desktop. Actually, the slide's a little bit out of date. Video and audio is part of the mobile app now, but true group video and audio is on our roadmap. So you can do a quick chat with Sean one-on-one with video, but joining a larger team meeting, we're still going to ask that for video that you join on a desktop for now. So I mentioned AD, so you can very much assume, and you're correct in knowing that all modern authentication is totally supported in Microsoft Teams. Same with encryption, right? Teams data is encrypted at rest and encrypted at transit and respects Azure Active Directory encryption policies. If you've got someone in your security department saying, well, hey now, this new Microsoft thing, what sort of compliance does it have? Everything that we have across Office 365 is right here as far as compliance go. So the industry standards in some countries, like the US, ISO 27001 and 27018. For banks, SSAE 16, SOC 1. I don't want to bore you with more of these acronyms, but again, if you're using Office 365 today, any workload, you've already made the decision that you're comfortable with these compliance tools, which is fantastic, and you can go ahead and turn on Teams today, and it doesn't break any of those rules because of all the encryption and compliance. This is a slide that should have been removed because I am not a developer, and I will sit in on a Teams development session, and I'll see these terms, but when I was on the committee that helped select content for the European SharePoint Conference, this is where I told everyone I was going to go get a cup of coffee. By all means, if you want to learn more about development inside Teams, I do hope you go visit dev.office.com so you can learn more about the different architecture, etc. That's how I get around the dev section. That's the questions I won't answer. A couple things. This is really the one piece of information I wanted to share, and then I'd like to get to Q&A. Telephone calls over Teams, right? You saw those numbers. The fact that I can quickly go into Teams and chat with someone. How's that working? Well, if I'm in the same building as Albert, my colleague, the signaling is always going to go from the shortest distance, right? So it would stick behind our firewall. And I do apologize for the Nespresso noise in the background. It's all good. My wife is caffeinating here in Los Angeles where it's a little bit early in the background. But at least I'm talking to Europe, and you all know what Nespresso is. And if you don't hear that, then I want to thank Jabra for a very good noise-canceling microphone. So as far as the call flows go, one-on-one media, the goal is to travel directly between the two endpoints. It is so important to open up all these UDP ports. So the same way you would open up these ports for Skype for Business, we provide you with the list. It's right there inside TechNet, but the URLs and IP addresses you need to open are there as well. So I'm not going to go into the specific architecture because I haven't implemented anything like this in a very, very long time. So really, let's just kind of bring it all together. I often get asked, well, hey, Matt, what licensing includes Microsoft Teams? So for a small business, that means Microsoft Office 365 Business Essentials or Business Premium. Both SKUs are designed for companies that are 300 employees or less. When you get to our enterprise SKUs, a lot of customers assume it's only in our premium ones. That's not true. Office 365 Enterprise E1, E3, E5. If you still have E4, you got it. And what we have not announced, or excuse me, what we just recently announced that I'm very excited is that it is now part of K1. So feedback from customers was, I've got my frontline workers, they're drivers, they're in sales, they're retail at a restaurant, they are, in a clothing store, and they could really use the ability to chat with people back at corporate. And so we heard the feedback loud and clear, and we have now added and implemented Microsoft Teams as part of the very low kiosk SKU or the frontline worker SKU inside Office 365. So that means as little as $4 US per user per month, someone can get email, SharePoint, and now Microsoft Teams. So that's really exciting when it comes to the licensing. All right. So as far as Teams support goes, we have many, many options. If you are a Microsoft customer with 50 seats or more, paid, I love that they have to put paid in there, we now have a team that is available to support you called Fast Track. If you're a larger company and you have a Microsoft account team, you're probably familiar with Fast Track. Simply go to fasttrack.microsoft.com and you could get a Microsoft project manager and an engineer, a technical specialist, to assist you in your rollout. If you're a Microsoft partner, fantastic. You can look into joining our Fast Track team to help onboard customers to Microsoft Teams. So next, turn on Teams right now. Go. If you're not sure if it's on, simply go to the URL teams.microsoft.com to see if it's turned on in your environment and start inviting other people. If it says it's not turned on and you're an admin, turn it on. Go to your admin console and go to services and turn it on. If you're not an admin, go ask someone to get that turned on for you. Continue to give us feedback. It's surprising to tell you that this has only been out for a few months and we've got millions of users every single day now. So we want to hear your feedback on what you'd like to see. And with that, that's the end of my formal presentation with Microsoft Teams. So Shane, you said there were a bunch of questions in there for me. Would you like to read them to me? Should I go to the chat window? What do you recommend?
Oh, I'm going to call them out to you, Matt. We're going to be, we've got loads there just streaming in by the bucket load. So I think you've got all your new team members in here asking you questions. So let's go for it.
All right. Very good.
Okay. First question. You can probably guess what the first question is going to be.
Let me guess. It's, hey, Matt, I missed the slide where you said it because I wasn't listening. So when are we going to have external access? Is that the one?
No, it's not external access, but it's Yammer. So why choose Teams over Yammer?
Oh, that's a great question. So I don't. I actively am in both every day, all day long. And that's because Teams is where my group of people, my up to 600 people I work with are. I'm not in any team that's for 600 people. My largest team is about 110, and those are every person in the United States that does my job. But most of my teams are account teams or project teams. So I know and I've met every person inside every one of my teams. I know who they are. I know what they do. Yammer, at a company like Microsoft with 100,000 people, I've never met most of these people, but I do know they all have the similar interest for me. So Yammer is where I go to ask a general question. For example, I'll go to the Teams engineering group and say, hey guys, it's June 7th. Do we have external access yet? I really need it. And someone in engineering is going to respond, hey Matt, be patient. We told you it was the end of the month. That means we reserve the right to go to 11:59 p.m. at night on June 30th. So that's when I use Yammer, right? Or I'd say, hey guys, I have an issue, and this is a real story. My customer needs, Teams files to work offline. And the response is, well, don't they have internet? And my response in Yammer is, not in this particular case. This is for one of my agriculture companies, and these people are using Teams on an iPad when they're physically out in the fields picking oranges for their produce company out in the middle of Central California where, they don't have cellular. So it was a really neat conversation where I had 3 other people in agriculture in Europe respond, hey, this is really an interesting thread. I'm interested in this too. And the product group responded, hey, that's great. There's no place for that in Teams, right? Teams is designed for true collaboration, but Yammer is still the enterprise company-wide social. Now, what we have done on some of my teams is we've added a Yammer thread into a channel so we can see what's going on related to a topic. For example, I'm very interested in GDPR right now, so I've added a GDPR Yammer thread into a team for my local Southern California team because it's so important to my customers. I hope that helps. I really do.
Sure. Okay. Once guest sharing is enabled, will there be any setting at tenant level to switch it on or off?
I would imagine yes. I'm not on the architecture team, but basically anything in Office 365, you can go tenant-wide to turn off sharing. We have just announced the ability to permit people in SharePoint and groups to allow an admin, like a team lead, to allow external sharing and turn it on and off. So I would hope that's going to come down to Teams, but I don't have the answer to that. But it is tenant-wide for sure.
Okay. Can you get notifications when someone has added you to the conversation through email or just through the Teams notification window you can set?
The answer is email. So when you've been added to a team, you'll get an email notification if you make sure email notification is on. So by default, it is. So if you've never been in Teams and someone invites you to Teams, you'll get a notification, an email, and it'll invite you to go in.
Okay. Where are the SharePoint sites in Teams located? Is it in your tenancy, and how do you access the site collection?
Great question. So, yep, it's just in your tenancy. So by default, your SharePoint sites are in your tenant name.sharepoint.com/sites. In this particular case, it'll be your tenant name.sharepoint.com/teams. So if you're a SharePoint admin, you can manage all of the team SharePoint sites the same exact way you would with traditional SharePoint.
Okay. Is it possible to, by default, show the documents of the root folder instead of the general folder?
Oh, well, that's an excellent question. So general folder is the root folder. So if you were to look at the URL, it would be, teams or yourcompany.sharepoint.com/teams/X, shared documents. That's really where general is. So general equals shared documents.
Okay. This question, we live by Outlook, so one concern I have is people not sure if their conversations were in Outlook email or chat in Teams, and therefore have no one place for project info. Any recommendations on this?
That's a great question. That's a conversation to have with your team. And
Okay.
if you are rolling out Teams, right, you say, hey guys, let's all agree that we're going to use Teams for this project. One way to kind of hybridize it is if it's a team that's very heavy email focused, and you will be for a while, is to add the email address from the team. So I went get email address, added that to the thread, so all the email users are notified that you added it, and all your Teams users are going to see those emails. But those are two separate conversations, and if someone asks, wait, when do I use what? Formal conversations are still going to be an email, right? So, dear team, I have some very sad news or very important news, and it's a 6-paragraph conversation. That's still an email, right? But if it's a quick 1 or 2 line informal about the project, that's where it can live in Teams.
Okay. Do conversations you enter directly in the integrated apps tabs, e.g. Planner, appear in the main conversation window as well, or only within the chat in the tab or the app?
By the way, I totally feel like we're doing a press conference, but I do not want to bring in any sort of politics, especially in my country. So the answer is it can be in both. So when you create a tab, you'll get a notification that the tab was created inside the channel it was created in, or the general. But if there are edits or changes, you won't see anything. You will have to go to the tab to see that.
Okay. Is the Power BI restricted to what the user is allowed to see? So what happens if they have users with different Power BI roles or security levels?
It's just, effectively, it's an inline frame at the end of the day. So whatever permissions you have is what you're going to see. So if someone added, if one of our vice presidents added, human resources data to my team on accident, he'll click it and he'll see it, but I'll click and it says, I'm sorry, you don't have access to this data, or you only have Y access.
Okay. Will the ability to add, a OneNote from another SharePoint site to tabs be coming down the road?
By the way, I can almost guess who asked the question about adding OneNote from a different place into a team. A company I work with at Microsoft had this exact issue because they started to have this OneNote. They've used it forever. And they're like, no, I don't want to move it. It can't move locations. So the answer is this has been raised with engineering, and I don't know. A workaround perhaps might be to add SharePoint site and simply drop the URL of that OneNote in that tab, but trust me, I feel your pain and I understand the need. One of the best things everyone can do here is go to user voice. So go to uservoice.com, go to Microsoft Teams or the OneNote user voice and put in this request. It's already in there, and upvote it. So our engineering team hears your request loud and clear.
Okay. Can we use a Yammer stream in Teams instead of Teams chat?
You can use a Yammer stream in Teams, but no, you can't stop people from chatting. As a matter of fact, I just recommend don't use Teams. I would also add on, I had a customer that said, hey, we want to set up Teams, but we want chat to be one directional only from the management. Can we turn off responses? And I mean, it was an awkward thing because we all looked around the room and said, why don't you just set up a SharePoint site or a news feed, right? It kind of defeats the purpose. So this is democratization of communication, and everyone will be chatting. So anyway, no, you can't turn off chat. I recommend simply setting up a SharePoint site or groups if you don't want people to chat. They're just going to text each other.
Okay. This person here says, I am in many teams and channels. How can I manage or see all my tasks, etc., of all teams I have joined?
Great question. So tasks are related to Planner, and so I do know that a unified Planner view of tasks assigned exists in the Planner app. The Planner team is working on embedding that into Teams a little bit better. So I would say that is in development.
Okay. Do team members need the Power BI license to see or interact with the Power BI info in Teams, given it's just announced and sharing reduction is free Power BI?
That's a really good question. I'm going to have to say it depends. So it's a little bit fuzzy right now, in my opinion. But if someone did create a team, a Power BI page, and someone just wants to do some clicking around, it should work. I recommend testing it out inside your organization because, again, we just made an announcement on enhancing the Power BI free. It should work, but again, I'm not sure if that's been rolled out across all tenants yet.
Okay. Does Teams always need an internet connection? Because this person here says that when they've traveled abroad and using Wi-Fi that they've noticed sometimes it was unavailable or blank.
Interesting. Yeah, Teams does require internet connectivity.
Okay. Hiya, is there a mind map type plugin? A mind map type plugin?
Mind map's a really cool tool, and we are not actually mapping your brain. That's a different neuroscience activity that we'll talk about in the future, Microsoft. But there is a company that I saw in there. I'm going to look for it. But the actual mind map company, I believe you can simply, if they're not already there, I recommend reaching out to them to see if they might be adding a Teams plugin soon.
Okay, we've 2 more minutes left. We'll see how many more we can get through. Groups versus teams, what is the best to use?
Oh, I've already answered that, but I will tell you, teams. Groups under the hood is the membership, but Teams adds that true persistent chat. So I highly recommend looking into leveraging Teams so people can use a Teams app and people can have persistent chat.
Okay. Will you be adding the ability to find documents via the Teams app?
To add documents? Yes. So right now, you can. Find files or add files?
Find documents. Yeah.
Oh, find, yeah. So search will be getting better as well. Yes, so it is coming in. When you say app, that's already supported in desktop. It is coming to the mobile app very soon.
Okay, great. How can I plan or schedule events, not only Skype conference for a team or a channel, and see it in Teams or channel agenda as also in my personal agenda?
Oh, that's an interesting question. If you create a meeting inside Teams, it should also sync and appear in your personal calendar in Outlook. If it's not, that just could be something that we're trying to sort out and get working.
Okay. There's a question here, but I think you've already answered. Continues to be used by Office 365 invited external users.
Okay.
That's coming.
Yep, that's coming. That's coming.
Okay,
last
great.
Question?
Last question. Okay, I'll take the biggest one I can find. Are you ready?
Oh, boy.
Any update on the ability to set time limits on teams or groups? The ability to automatically age out unused teams would encourage IT admins to sell the idea to business users. Also, is there an easy way to move content, files from a team to a SharePoint site? I'd like to use Teams as in a short-term workstream option, but don't want to become longer team storage location.
So I'll answer the second one first. Since the files are just in SharePoint, you can move things around SharePoint every day, all day, if you choose to move it out of the team. And the answer to your first question is I don't know. So we can look into that.
Okay, Matt, that's about half the questions, would you believe? So.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
So, and I have to say, thank you so much for taking the time out and getting up so early to do this with us this morning. Very much appreciated here at the European SharePoint Conference, Office 365 and Azure Conference. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Matt.
Great. Thank you for having me, Shane. Everyone, thank you so much.
Okay, everybody. That's pretty much it for today. Let me just jump back here to my screen and mute Matt and say thank you to Matt. Okay, we're nearly there. Any moment now. Great. Okay, so that's it for today. Again, a massive thank you to Matt and a great presentation on Microsoft Teams. Join us for our next webinar with Knut Rebel-Moe on Can You Build an Intranet with Modern SharePoint? This is happening on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017 from 3 to 4 p.m. CEST. That is it for now. Thank you all for attending and have a great day. Thank you and goodbye.